Okay, so we last talked about internal calculation. Okay, we went through this whole process here of state, reward, and cost, which equals value. Value equals reward minus cost. You can see this here. Control, how much control does the living organism have in the environment, in the task that it's performing? And then the action and policy. The policy is who you become. The belief systems, your core beliefs, the phenotype, your personality. This is all about learning and repetition. Okay, remember, as the reward is high, if we want to put this in a seesaw, because it's a great visual representation, reward is high and cost is low, this equals repeat. This is a bad problem in modern society because you can do things without effort for reward. And that's not the way evolution is built. Evolution is built with this effort first and then reward. On the opposite of that, if cost is high, reward is low, this equals avoid. So high reward equals repeat. The living organism is going to repeat that. High cost is avoidance. The living organism is going to avoid that task. We ended last episode about the dorsal striatum because we built the habit. We built repetition. The living organism is going to repeat things that it conserves biological energy. Okay, remember that's the whole purpose of the internal calculator. The brain does not want to work. It just wants to respond. And it's a metabolic bank accountant. We're going to add on to that today. It's a metabolic bank accountant because it's determining how much energy do I have available to me to execute these things, to execute life. And it will allocate and conserve biological energy. So if this cost is low, it's going to want to repeat that. If that cost is high, it's going to want to avoid that. That's the whole network of this metabolic bank accountant. So we built this habit, okay, and we kind of talked about how the autistic phenotype is within these little networks here. But this is true with everybody. That's the beauty of this. So with this habit and evaluating these values with this reward and cost, we can know that under uncertainty, cost is very high, and we have to exhibit more control over the environment. And that's the ACC here. That's a big part of the ACC. There's a lot of good research on autism in the ACC. One, the spindle neurons, remember those are fast acting for social environments. Social environments. Autistic phenotype avoids that. Too costly. And then the ACC is a part of the salience network. Okay, so that helps modulate your attention. What do you consider valuable? Is the way that you can look at the salience network. What has your attention? Is it external or is it internal? The ACC has a big input into the dorsal striatum, which is where the habits are built, where repetition is built. And we love habits. Living organisms love habit because it automates the response. You don't have to think about things. Okay? And it conserves energy. We love habits. We love repetition that equals reward or minimizes cost. So this repetition with the autistic phenotype is meaningful. So let's talk a little bit more about the prediction, because that's a big equation here for learning. Remember, this prediction error is kind of zoomed out. You can zoom into it with reward prediction error or aversive prediction error. But we're going to add in another little equation here that's a part of this, that's going to kind of help explain reward and cost differently, or just kind of add to it. Another key takeaway from the first episode that we did here is you are not responding to the world, to the environment. You are responding to the predictions you have here, especially here, here, and here. You are responding to the predictions you have about the world, about your task, about how you are navigating the world. Remember, for this equation right here, you are trying to ultimately save and conserve biological energy. Two major things that we always talk about is space-time, how these neural correlates are operating, how fast they are operating through space and time, and then biological energy. We're human beings. We conserve energy. We live off of energy. Okay? So if you really want to add in some more autism stuff here with that attention to detail, the autistic phenotype, especially socially, can really pinpoint and send attention to those really small details about the discrepancies of the world, the discrepancies of social situations. All of the meaning is trying to comprehend. And this fast rate of sensory processing that we outlined here in green, just using vision, but it's also true with the auditory brainstem response. We have good whiteboards on that, and even touch. So there are a couple of neuromodulators that I want to talk about because one, this isn't fixed. The intensity here isn't fixed. So there are two neuromodulators here, dopamine and norepinephrine, that I want to talk about that really amplifies this stuff that we're talking about. And remember, we talk about dopamine with the basal ganglia episodes with the substantia nigra, which is right through here in the mesencephalon, the midbrain, okay? And the substantia nigra, pars compacta, is the dopamine, and it speaks up to the caudate here and the putamen. This is the dorsal striatum, the top part of the striatum. Okay, we're going to introduce the nucleus accumbens, which is right here, and we're also going to introduce the ventral tegmental area. Ventral tegmental area is another spot for dopamine, and it will speak heavily to the nucleus accumbens. The nucleus accumbens is in the ventral striatum, the bottom side. It's striatum. Striatum means stripes because there's a lot of white matter tracks running through here that makes it look like these little nuclei have stripes. It's the internal capsule. If you look at an overhead view of the brain, you can see these internal capsules kind of look like this. They kind of look X'd. One on this side and then one on the left side. And then you can also see that the caudate nucleus pushes in on the third ventriculars, the ventricles. There's a lot of biological power running through this ventricular system, a lot, because of the water. So these white matter tracks provides this better space-time and biological energy. So the dopamine here is really modulating effort, gain, because this is going to be the new equation here, is the net gain. The learning rate, how fast do you want to repeat a task or repeat a stimuli, and how much you want to avoid it. This is dopamine here is really big in learning and reinforcement. It's not just addiction, but it's heavily involved in addiction. And dopamine will also be about exploration. How do you navigate your life? Whenever things are good, whenever the living organism has a net gain, it will repeat that and dopamine increases. It will stamp this. It reinforces this activity, this behavior. And this state and value will get heavy inputs from this area, from the VTA, the nucleus accumbens, the VTA up through the cortex. And the motivation rises. And this becomes more of what you do for your core beliefs, your phenotype, your personality, and so forth. How much are you being hijacked by this? Okay, so let's say the contrary. You don't like something, the prediction you made didn't give you the outcome, or there's a lot of cost involved. So you avoid things. So dopamine will drop. Dopamine drops. So these connections, and then the pars compacta will stamp the basal ganglia, the dorsal striatum specifically, to not want to do that. And your motivation decreases. So dopamine here with this little neural correlate that we have is intensifying. That's why they're called modulators. You might think of them as neurotransmitters, but that's kind of limited. They're much more than that. So remember, dopamine updates this OFC for the state because it's telling you what kind of state you're in the moment. The ventral medial prefrontal cortex, they have strong connections with the neuromodulatory systems, things like serotonin even, and norepinephrine and dopamine. There's a lot of subcortical inputs running through the ventral medial prefrontal cortex too, because that's where the value is at ultimately being calculated. Remember, we called this area the scoreboard, okay? And the striatum, of course, we cover that in the basal ganglia a lot. And then the ACC as well. Dopamine will help signal how much control is involved, remember? Because the ACC is like, how much effort do I need here? There's a lot of uncertainty here. Uncertainty is a big thing in life. I promise you, you don't like uncertainty. How much are you being hijacked by these areas right here, especially the ventral medial prefrontal cortex and the ACC? The other area is, now, it's norepinephrine, and it's from the locus ceruleus, sometimes called the blue spot. But I already have blue, and I really want to do the neuromodulators in the same color. Kind of running out of colors here. But the locus ceruleus is right here. It shows up as blue on scans. And remember, if we just want to talk about it real fast, the dorsal raphe runs up through here in the para-aqueductal gray in the mesencephalon. The raphe is right through here. It runs kind of more vertically. The locus ceruleus here is sprinkling the brain with norepinephrine. It's brain energy, essentially. Okay, and if you see the pathways of norepinephrine, it lacks specificity, but it's just going all the way up through here in the cortex and the subcortical areas. There's massive amounts of, essentially it's just like sprinkling the brain. That's the best way I've heard it described. It sprinkles the brain without specificity. And it will even reach over there to the cerebellum. Okay? Norepinephrine here as a neuromodulator is help guiding effort and gain. So more of that value, okay? It will increase attention. It will give attention some intensity. It's very similar to dopamine. Remember, they come from the same amino acid, tyrosine. Dopamine and norepinephrine and melanin are all like this. You don't know what melanin is, I don't think. I don't know, maybe you do. This will help also the signal to noise. What do I need to spend my attention to versus weed out the noise, and cognitive effort. Okay, this is a big thing, and we're going to talk about a little bit about that exploration and effort versus quitting, because quitting will be right here. So whenever norepinephrine increases, the engagement of this ACC increases. It's kind of a little heightened, it's intense. But the living organism is saying, okay, this is worth it to me, or I need to do this. So the ACC will help control more effort. And what it's doing here with all of these cortical areas is it's telling you to stay on task, time on task. It's worth it. Whenever norepinephrine is decreased, your engagement drops. They're very similar to dopamine. The engagement drops and the control relaxes. You're more likely to give up. We're going to get there with astrocytes and giving up. And then the system will just reduce effort to conserve the energy. How hard should I be working and pushing right now? Is a question that norepinephrine is help solving. But alongside norepinephrine and even dopamine, there's a type of glia cell that we haven't talked about that we should, and it's called astrocytes, glia astrocytes. And this is our best friend. That's the best way I'm going to be able to explain it, I think. You can see wonderful research on glia astrocytes and persisting versus quitting here. This is a very good paper. Cell Press is a very good paper. Dopamine and norepinephrine equals effort versus outcome. So whenever you are providing effort, whenever your brain, this whole system here, the whole brain is performing tasks, giving effort, using biological energy, and the outcome is satisfying, or it's a net gain, a net benefit, you will persist. You will give more effort. Remember to maintain this reward. This is a good way of looking at it. When reward is high, dopamine and norepinephrine are going to be high, and effort based off of the outcome that you're getting will sustain. In contrast to that, effort versus outcome, whenever the effort you're providing is not yielding the results, whenever that cost is high, whenever you're performing a task and it's not giving you what you think you should be getting, or you're used to getting, or you're predicted to get, you will quit. So dopamine and norepinephrine is kind of helping persist or quit. And the astrocytes, especially in the locus coeruleus, is your best friend. Whenever reward is high, it's your hype man. It's telling you, keep going. You're doing the right thing. And remember from the first episode, this high net gain with reward doesn't matter if it's healthy or unhealthy. It doesn't matter if you want to do it or you don't want to do it. It doesn't matter. Think about things like addictions and think about things like bad habits. How much are you being held captive because of high reward? Think about smartphone usage. Think about social media technology. You are being hijacked. You are being captive because of this dopamine and norepinephrine and those rewards. Your brain is telling you to keep going. The brain is dumb. It doesn't want to work. It just wants to respond. Whenever the effort is not giving you the results, the astrocytes, being your best friend, is like, what are you doing? Why do you keep doing this stupid stuff? What are you doing? And the astrocytes will come in and shut the norepinephrine off. It will come in and just basically blanket the norepinephrine from the locus coeruleus, and your brain will not release all of this norepinephrine for the biological energy anymore. And that's exactly what this is. You can also see kind of a different version of it with different areas, but these two kind of go hand in hand. This paper right here, they did 6 experiments trying to prove themselves wrong, and they couldn't do it. This is where astrocytes is your best friend and it's telling you to quit. The effort that you're providing versus the rewards that you're getting, the outcome is not worth it. And it doesn't matter if it's healthy or unhealthy. It doesn't matter if you want to do it or you don't want to do it. Quitting is all mental. This will signal way before your body will actually give up. And this is based off of you as a living organism, based off of everything that we've talked about here. We are so identical in these structures, these neural correlates, these brain regions, but we are so different. We are so different with the amount of effort and motivation that we have. And for what? Don't allow yourself to be held hijacked because of this. Every time you want to repeat things, you can think of it as it's rewarding. And there's a good equation here that I really want to kind of add into this prediction error. What happened minus the expected, okay? And that's net benefits equals expected value minus, but remember, that is this, minus metabolic cost, that delta. This right here is the equation of your life. That is what you need to know. Because remember, the brain is dumb. It doesn't want to work. It's just wanting to optimize this. And you will be held hijacked. You will be held captive on the things that you're doing, especially with social media, especially with technology. So this is a huge component of this. This is a broad equation here. You can see things, you can see some great papers, some more cell press, trends in neuroscience here that talk about this stuff. This is a great paper for that. Trends in cognitive science, another great paper of this. The metabolic internal calculations. Everything is about internal calculators to conserve energy. The things that give you reward, you're going to repeat those if you want to or not. The things that are costly to you biologically, metabolically, you are going to avoid those. So I want to wrap up with just saying about what kind of situation is kind of weighted differently. Okay, so when things are stable, a pretty good equation here of result, you're able to persist a little bit. So a stable environment is the OFC, the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, and the striatum is there's a little bit more weight on there. So there's less cognitive effort with the ACC, so less control over the situation. And the insula is kind of, they're not that much in play as much. And that's a good thing because this uncertainty, we don't like that. We don't like it. Whenever things are rough, whenever things are hard, in contrast, the ACC and the insula and the amygdala, remember the amygdala, is there's a little bit more weight on that. And this will mean that the control needs to increase. The energy cost needs to increase. So back to this again, back to this, and back to this. Whenever you're in a high sensory load, when things are chaotic, like the autistic phenotype, especially socially, remember all of these sensations here. The insula is heightened. There's a lot more weight on the insula. Remember, it's privileged. Then the parietal lobe, because there's a lot of sensations. The parietal is helping make sense of the sensations. And the thalamus, there's a lot of inhibition. Needs to be a lot of inhibition here, because if you were forced to perceive all of the sensations that you actually have going on, you will be overwhelmed. It's too much. That's why the thalamus has little assistants like the thalamic reticular nucleus and the subthalamic nucleus of the basal ganglia. Not mentioned here. We did not mention the subthalamic nucleus here, except for that time. Whenever you're in a deep focus or flow, when things are going well, you have this like cognitive high, the OFC, the ventral medial prefrontal cortex and the striatum are also more weighted because we're just automating these responses here. So you're in a good state. The value is in a good spot. It's clear. And then you can execute the task, the dorsal striatum. So this is a good reason of why the brain is a metabolic bank accountant. Okay, control is metabolically expensive. Okay, error processing is expensive. With this, because we can add in this equation, these equations, all of these brain regions, all that internal friction, and updating the models is expensive. We don't like when our beliefs are challenged. We don't like change. I just said that. What I just said means we don't like change, and you know that. Updating our models is expensive, meaning we have to change. And that goes back to this. There's so much that goes back to this and being hijacked and captive here. That's a big thing. That's the biggest takeaway. So I just want to end with this right here, and everything that I just went on this rant about is why habits emerge, routines emerge, okay? And we conserve these energies and we just repeat that. And we like that prediction because it's common to us. We don't have to have all of this effort and work. So that means less friction. So the main thing here is the brain is trying to maximize the value, whether you want to or not, whether you like the stimulus or not. It's trying to minimize uncertainty because it's costly. You have to do a lot of effort here, okay? And then minimize this metabolic load. That is the main goal of the brain. The net benefits. So this is kind of just wrapping up. This is true with everybody, not just the autistic phenotype. It's just context dependent.